This is a conversation that we need to talk about, and that's being misaligned. And that
Yeah.
was a word that you said that stuck out to me. You said that we were misaligned in our values. We were misaligned in, I'm sure when the values are misaligned, it's really hard to even build off that because the values is really the foundation first, right? So let me ask you a question. What was some of the things that you felt like were misaligned?
So we came from different backgrounds. Okay.
Mhm.
So my background with my, and I say this carefully, I had my mom and my dad in the household. And so just foundationally, like how our family was structured. We didn't have a hustle mentality. When I say hustle mentality, it was like, we got to make ends meet. We got to do. Like I kind of had this, like, I don't know, I had to feel like I had a home where there was safety. And him, on the other hand, in no fault of his own, he had a home where it's like, we got to grind, we got to hustle. His dad wasn't necessarily in his life when he was growing up. So, his mom and his grandmother, aunts did, wonderful job, raising them and good.
Right.
And we got to make this thing happen. And so we had two different viewpoints of like what a home and kind of like how we approach things should
Mhm.
be. Okay. So it was different. Like, he would often say, he's like, I bring struggle. I come from struggle. And see, for me, I didn't. So I didn't have the mindset of like, it's okay. Like to me, it's not okay if my lights get turned off. That's not normal for me. That's not okay. Like we we
Right.
don't we don't do that.
Mhm.
I know things happen, and I don't say
Right.
that anyone who's gone through things. But I'm just like that wasn't a norm for me. So when like stuff started going downhill, or we can't have enough to pay this and do that, I didn't know how to respond to that because I'm like, I don't respond like that. I'm not okay like with waiting to get to the last straw before we just see how the chips fall. Like that just wasn't my thing. So our mentality, how we approach things like in our home was different. It's because of how we were raised. Foundationally, and I'm gonna say this too, foundationally, even from a um belief in God standpoint, it was different. Like I was raised, to believe in God and believe in Jesus. Now I chose at an older age to commit to that more than, I was just raised that way, but I chose to commit more. He wasn't, he was raised in different ways. But I will say when I met him, he chose to like, hey, I'm gonna go to church, I'm gonna believe in Jesus. But I honestly tell you, when I think about it, I think sometimes you're influenced by people that are around you. And I think he knew that those were my values. And it was kind of like, okay, then we're doing this church thing. But deep down inside, he had questions, he had other beliefs, he wanted to explore other things. And we were not aligned on that. I mean, I'll never forget we had a conversation. We were driving home to see my parents. I was pregnant at the time with my daughter. And somehow it came up, we were talking, and I was like, oh yeah, like we're gonna go to church. And he was like, I was like, I'll make sure she goes to church. Our kids should go to church. And he was like, well, I think they should choose. And I'm like, choose? There's no
Mhm.
choice.
Right.
Again, so those are the things it was different. We just viewed things differently. And there were just conversations I never had because, I mean, come on, I was just like, well, eventually, you align with people, or it looked surfacely that we were aligned on enough to move forward. But when I think about it, we were not aligned on the foundational things. So it was never going to be stable. And I think sometimes what we do in relationships is we hope that as time goes on, the other person might eventually get to where you are, you
Mm.
know, and you hope that you can influence them enough. But at the
Mm.
end of the day, like, who did I think I was to influence? This man has free will. He can choose what he wants to choose. Like, who do I think I am to do that? What rights do I have to do that? I didn't think about that. But at that time, how we do as women, we're just like, girl, if I'm nice enough, if I do enough, he'll see and he'll want to, no, like
Wow.
that's his choice. He has to choose. And so again, it was just those fundamental foundational things from how we were raised, what we believed, that we just were not on the same page with it. That's all. We just were not aligned.